Should I file a Q to change my separation code from personality disorder to major depression? Additionally, if changed, will I be considered medically retired? That's a good question. Matt, you want to take that one?
Well, they're using both military and VA terms there.
Mm-hmm.
So the first point would be some of what you've asked about is a military issue, changing separation codes, medical retirement. That's something that you actually have to take up with the military boards of review, which is a whole nother area. That's not something that Carmella or I do. We interface with the VA on behalf of veterans. So there's military benefits, there's VA benefits. Some people can get both. Some people can only get one or the other. That's a whole can of worms in and of itself. But there is such a thing in the VA world of CUE, which is that clear and unmistakable error that I was talking about in the very beginning about going back from a previous claim that had been adjudicated, maybe even in the far past. So that's a thing. And then, of course, it is common to see still in this day and age the claims of individuals who were wrongly um, diagnosed with something that maybe even at the time was the prevailing medical consensus. Um, but we now know more information about mental health. We now know better than to have labeled as many individuals that got assigned a personality disorder versus depression or PTSD. There's a reason we don't call it shell shock anymore. That word has kind of fallen out of favor. We use the clinical terms that are in the medical community to better and more appropriately reflect what the claims are. So I would advise anyone just in general who's got a personality disorder diagnosis, and that may be a big barrier to getting the VA benefits for the claim. I don't know about on a CUE basis, but certainly your your hump that you've got to get over is to say, I really strongly question whether that personality disorder diagnosis was right. And can't a medical professional take a look at my case and say, you know what, that actually probably was more likely what we would call today PTSD or major depression or unspecified anxiety disorder. I mean, whatever that medical professional's opinion may be, I wouldn't begin to be able to point to one diagnosis or the other. But all I know is if somebody comes to me with a personality disorder diagnosis, I'm going to immediately say, we challenge that. We say that that's not right, and it is something that today would not be called a personality disorder, and go from there. And just again, you just gotta kind of let the medical professionals do their work from there and see if they agree or don't disagree. And if they disagree, do they disagree for the right reasons, or have they got it all wrong? But that's where I would start.
Right. There's some information floating around about the number of people that were diagnosed with personality disorder, which I think what Matt was referring to. I don't know whether it's a study or just an article, and during a certain time period in the military. And if, your case was during that time period, you might want to get it relooked at. I don't know whether you didn't say what your discharge was, whether you need to pursue a discharge upgrade, or you're being barred from VA benefits altogether right now. But if it is barring you from VA benefits, you definitely want to pursue that, things on the military side to get it changed. If it's not a bar to benefits, um, you've been diagnosed with depression and it's service connected. I don't know that you would need to file a Q. So um, a Q is a very clear and unmistakable error. Is a very high legal standard, and you don't want to file one when you could take another route to get where you need to go, if that makes sense. So it would be my suggestion that you find some sort of representation and look into what needs to happen in your situation on the military side and on the VA side.
Can I add something real quick to that as
Yes.
well? I I I always advise individuals where you mentioned the barrier to service. Sometimes the VA will say this is a regulatory or statutory barrier based on the discharge type. I you can win a claim on the VA side and resolve it. You may need to prove what's called insanity, and insanity is a very specific term of art. I want to be clear. It's not what, hearing that word now, if some of you have never heard of insanity, it's not what you think it is. It's a very specific legal term of art. It's defined. It's something, I assure you, it's something more common than what you're thinking it is. And you may or may not need to pursue the military side of things in order to get benefits. I've won clients' cases, and again, not on a CUE basis, but for adding records that go all the way back. But I've won it where we get PTSD recognized all the way back in Vietnam that was mislabeled as a personality disorder, and then they didn't need to do a discharge upgrade. Now, of course, I would always tell a veteran who doesn't want to have that paper say what it says, to please, of course, even if you got the VA benefits you were looking, that doesn't mean you're happy with a discharge saying something that reads, something other than the truth. But you don't, I just wanted to make the point, you don't have to pursue something through the military, and the VA is pretty bad about telling you, we're not going to look at you. Listen, we've looked at, you've applied 7 times now, and we've told you you've got to go through the military. And I would just caution against getting some assistance before you just take the VA's advice at face value. That may or may not be true.
Right. And I've won an insanity case before, so it is possible. And look into the VA's definition of insanity and see if it. I don't know all the details of your case from your question, but definitely listen to what Attorney Wilcox is saying, because it's very good information.